Assalamu alaikum, dear students of class 10th. Welcome to your e-learning class of chemistry with your teacher Hubru. Chapter is acids, bases and salts, and the topic we are going to discuss is types of acids and bases. Let's begin with the classification of acids. Acids are classified in two ways, that is on the basis of number of protons and on the basis of ionization. On the basis of number of protons, acids have two types, that is monoprotic acid and polyprotic acid. While on the basis of ionization, acids are divided into strong acid and weak acid. Types of acid on the basis of number of protons. The first type is monoprotic acid. Its definition is the acids which produce one proton per molecule are called monoprotic acids. You can understand this by watching these examples. Hydrochloric acid is an acid that can produce only one proton at a time. So it is called as monoprotic acid. Mono means one and protic means proton. Nitric acid HNO3 also can produce only one proton at a time. So it is also called as monoprotic acid. Acetic acid CH3COOH. So it is also a monoprotic acid because it can produce only one proton at a time. Benzoic acid can also produce only one proton. Hydroiodic acid or hydrogen iodide can produce only one proton. Similarly, hydrofluoric acid HF can produce only one proton. So these all are monoprotic acids because these can produce only one proton at a time. On the basis of number of protons, the second type is polyprotic acid. Its definition is the acids which produce more than one proton per molecule are called polyprotic acids. As the name indicates, poly means many, protic means protons. So these acids can produce more than one proton at a time. Let's see the examples. Here sulfuric acid has two hydrogen atoms. So its one molecule can produce two protons at a time. So on that behalf, it is called as polyprotic acid because it is producing more than one protons, and as it is producing two protons, so on that base it is called as diprotic acid. Di means two. Similarly, carbonic acid has two hydrogen atoms. It can produce two protons at a time. So it is called as polyprotic or diprotic acid. Phosphoric acid has three hydrogen atoms. It can produce three protons. So it is called as triprotic or polyprotic acid. Now the types of acids on the basis of ionization. The first type is strong acid. Its definition is an acid that ionizes completely in an aqueous solution and gives a higher concentration or amount of hydrogen ions is called as strong acid. You can see the example. HCl dissolving in water, it produces H plus and chloride ions. As it is strong acid, so it is completely ionized in the aqueous solution. You can see in the diagram here acid molecules are completely intact, but when they are dissolved in water, they are dissociated into H plus and Cl minus ions. So as it is completely dissociated, it will behave as a strong electrolyte. The second type of acid on the basis of ionization is weak acid. Its definition is an acid which do not completely dissociates in an aqueous solution and gives lower concentration of hydrogen ions is called as weak acid. Example, acetic acid when dissolving in water gives acetate ions and hydrogen ions, but the dissociation is not complete. It is a partial dissociation. That is why the arrow here is double half-headed arrow, because there is no complete forward reaction. Here you can see in this diagram the acid molecules are completely intact, but when they are dissolved in water they are dissociated, but half of their molecules are still intact. Some of the molecules have been dissociated. So this type of acid is a weak electrolyte because there is less concentration of ions in its solution. Now let's begin the classification of bases. Bases are also classified in two ways. On the basis of hydroxyl ions, it is classified into monoacid bases and polyacid bases. While on the basis of ionization, bases are divided into strong base and weak base. Types of bases on the basis of hydroxyl ions. The first type is monoacid base. Its definition is the bases which produce one hydroxyl ion per molecule in an aqueous solution are called as monoacid bases, which means that these bases can produce only one hydroxyl ion at a time. Example, sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide can produce only one hydroxyl ion. Potassium hydroxide, its one molecule can produce only one hydroxyl ion. Similarly, ammonium hydroxide, it can produce only one hydroxyl ion at a time. So these all are monoacid bases. Now, why they are called as monoacid bases? So students, you are familiar with a reaction called as neutralization reaction, in which a base reacts with the acid and forms salt and water. Here, NaOH having only one hydroxyl ion can neutralize only one acid molecule. So that's why it is called as monoacid base, because it can neutralize only one acid molecule at a time. On the basis of hydroxyl ions, the second type of base is polyacid base. Its definition is the bases which produce more than one hydroxyl ion per molecule in an aqueous solution are called polyacid bases, means these bases have more than one hydroxyl ion per molecule. Let's see the examples. Here, barium hydroxide has two hydroxyl ions. Calcium hydroxide also has two hydroxyl ions, like more than one hydroxyl ion, so that's why they are called as polyacid bases. Poly means many. Similarly, iron hydroxide has three hydroxyl ions and aluminum hydroxide has three hydroxyl ions. These are called as polyacid bases because these molecules can neutralize more than one acid molecule at a time to form salt and water. Now, the types of bases on the basis of ionization. The first type is strong base. The base that ionizes completely in an aqueous solution and gives a higher concentration of hydroxyl ions is called as strong base. For example, sodium hydroxide is a strong base because when it dissolved in water, it completely ionizes and gives a higher concentration of hydroxyl ions. Here are some other examples of some common strong bases like sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, barium hydroxide, and calcium hydroxide. On the basis of ionization, the second kind of base is weak base. The base that do not ionizes completely in an aqueous solution and gives a lower concentration of hydroxyl ions is called as weak base. Its example is ammonium hydroxide. Ammonium hydroxide is a weak base because it undergoes partial dissociation. This double-headed arrow is showing the partial dissociation. It does not completely ionizes in an aqueous solution. You can see in the diagram, ammonia, when dissolves in water, dissociates into hydroxyl ions and ammonium ions, but some of its molecules are still intact. This is all about types of acids and bases. See you in the next lecture. Goodbye.